College students and their parents are hopefully having discussions about the possibility of taking a motorbike to college for campus commuting. The next step is to start your research. The biggest piece will be what is the best bike for your campus commuting needs? Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like and subscribe before you leave so you can catch all of the videos in this series. Before going into bike selection, I want to re-emphasize doing research on the campus involved. Parking can differ wildly across college campuses. While schools such as Georgia, Georgia Tech, and Kennesaw State do have motorcycle parking, a lot of other schools in Georgia don't. Georgia College in Milledgeville doesn't have motorcycle parking, but they do have golf cart parking and golf cart paths. Moving further abroad, Auburn, Florida State, Oklahoma State, the University of Minnesota, and Stanford all have motorcycle parking, but you need to check whatever school you're looking at. My goal with this series is just to open your eyes to a form of transportation that may not have occurred to you otherwise, but you still got to do your own research as to what kinds of transportation they allow. Now, every student's needs will be different when it comes to the quote-unquote perfect bike. It's going to depend on the distance involved, types of roads to be traveled, the terrain of the campus, rules of the college, and even the student's physical characteristics, because a bike's going to fit someone 5 feet tall a lot different than someone's over 6 feet tall. By the way, if you're more interested in electric skateboards, electric scooters, and e-bikes, I do have earlier installments in the series to deal with those. All right, let's state this up front. We're talking about campus commuting, a couple of miles to maybe a dozen on average, which means we're talking about inexpensive machines that are good for basic transportation needs, not performance bikes. We're going to address these in 3 categories: motor scooters less than or equal to 50 cc's, motor scooters over 50 cc's, and motorcycles. Motor scooters have obvious differences. The rider on a motor scooter is very relaxed, almost like sitting in a kitchen chair. Scooters typically have a step-through design where you can step through the bike instead of having to throw your leg over it to mount it. And they also have an automatic transmission. Without a clutch or gears, that makes it very simple to learn. As with many things in life, size is important. Obviously, a motor scooter of 50 cc's or less is going to be less powerful than one over 50 cc's. In the state of Georgia, a rider on a motor scooter less than or equal to 50 cc's is not required to have a motorcycle endorsement. However, you need to check the state laws wherever your student's going to be, because I think there are some states that do require an endorsement for this size scooter. For a 50cc motor scooter, you'll also want to check on the roads and the terrain involved. Steep hills or high-speed roads needed in the commute might make a scooter of that size undesirable. Now, I was recently on the campus of the University of Georgia. I saw a number of students riding 50cc motor scooters. There is no shame in riding a 50cc scooter on a college campus. So if you're getting a hassle from a student, just let them know. It's not a deal. Full disclosure, I am not a scooter guy. I know a couple of the better known brands such as Vespa and Honda. But there are a number of other brands that I just don't know about. You're really going to have to do your own research there. A 50cc motor scooter is probably going to run you, from what I've seen, around $750 to $4,700 once you throw in used bikes and some of the lesser known brands. The most obvious advantage for a scooter over 50 cc's is they're going to have more power. Duh. But there's also one benefit that is not quite as obvious, which is they have storage inside the bike. Some of these bikes have enough storage to put a helmet in there. Now, for a student, that could give them the capability of securing their helmet inside the bike while they go to class. Typically, motor scooters over 50 cc's are the same category as motorcycles for state licensing, which means getting a motorcycle endorsement, a tag, insurance, and all that stuff. It also means conforming to whatever the helmet laws are within your state, which you have to look up yourself because those also vary wildly from state to state. If you decide to get a scooter, whatever size, I still recommend taking the MSF Basic Rider course in order to obtain an endorsement, even if you're staying on 50 cc's. Just because you're riding on a smaller machine doesn't mean you have less need of learning the rules of the road and tips and tricks. Now, this is one of the places where you and your student are going to have to figure out what the laws are regarding motorcycle endorsements. In Georgia, we have one endorsement that covers two-wheel motorcycles, three-wheel motorcycles, and motor scooters. My understanding is that in other states, they can break these out into separate endorsements, and some of them may not even require an endorsement. You may be able to just use a driver's license. It's kind of all over the road. You'll need to do your own research on that. Once again, I'm going to stick to the major brands because it's what I know. Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and obviously Vespa all have scooters over 50 cc's. In general, an over 50 cc motor scooter will probably be between $2,000 up to around $9,000, or roughly double what an under 50 cc scooter would be. Finally, let's look at motorcycles. By and large, the best commuter motorcycles on a campus are going to be those considered quote-unquote beginner motorcycles, which are typically between 250 and 500 cc's in the United States. Motorcycles will fall into several different categories. Typically, these are going to give you more bang for your buck so far as power to cost. For example, the Yamaha X-Max has 292 cc's for $6,400, while their MT-03 naked bike has 321 cc's for only $5,000. 29 more cc's, $1,400 less dollars. Now, the first category of motorcycles is mini-motos, mini as in small. Honda has 5 motorcycles of 125 cc's or less. Their smallest is the Navi, which is 109 cc's, and it has an automatic transmission, just like a scooter. That means your student doesn't have to worry about a clutch or shifting gears. The Trail and Dax 125s have a foot shifter, but the clutch is automatic, making it very easy to learn and virtually impossible to stall. Meanwhile, the Grom and Monkey both have 124 cc's with a manual clutch. Two other bikes in this category come from Kawasaki and from CFMOTO. I think I've probably seen at least one of every one of these bikes around Georgia. Now, Honda stopped selling the Super Cub in the U.S. a couple of years back, but it's been in continuous production since 1958, which means there are going to be a lot of them out there on the used marketplace. Now, I wouldn't use any of these bikes if highway speeds are needed, but they are great commuters on streets with 25, 35, all the way up to the occasional 50 or 55 mile per hour street. Next come dual sports. Dual sport means they're essentially dirt bikes made street legal. The most popular models in the US will probably be from about 250 to 400 cc's. These are great bikes to learn on, and they're good commuters. Note that there is a difference between a dual sport and an adventure motorcycle, which is larger, heavier, and more expensive. Of course, the big four have lots of these. Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki are all well represented. But there are also other good dual sport bikes out there. Now, as for street bikes, we have some subcategories. Let's start with the simplest bikes known as naked or hyper naked. These are basic motorcycles. No fairings, no luggage, no anything. It's a motorcycle stripped down to the basics, hence the name naked. Again, good bikes out there from Yamaha, Kawasaki, Honda, CFMOTO, and more. You may also hear retro used to refer to some bikes, which are essentially naked bikes styled to resemble those from years ago. In addition to the offerings from Kawasaki and Yamaha, we can also add in some nice machines from Royal Enfield and Triumph. You'll hear sport or super sport used to refer to motorcycles that have plastic fairings to make them look like race bikes. And these are also the ones you'll typically know as crotch rockets, right? Now, as long as you adhere to the 500cc and under rule, these can be very good beginner and commuting bikes. Although, don't go with the Kawasaki Ninja 4RR. Even though it's technically the right size, that is a super sport bike. It is not a commuter. Now, here we have offerings from Yamaha, Kawasaki, Honda, Suzuki, CFMOTO. You'll also find bikes from Aprilia, KTM, and more, but I just can't cover everything here. For bikes of 500 cc's or less, the main remaining category is cruiser. You'll see other categories from street bikes like sport touring, adventure, things like that, but those are all typically much larger and more expensive machines. Trust me here, no matter what they say, your student does not need a $29,000 Honda Fireblade to commute to school. They just don't. It's not necessary to have a bike that can go 100 miles an hour in first gear to commute a few miles. Cruisers use what's called a foot-forward design. If you've seen big baggers like Harley-Davidson's, Indians, and such, those are foot-forward machines. The rider is sitting back with their feet in front of them. Honda, Kawasaki, and CFMOTO all have smaller machines than the big boys. But you may also find some Harley-Davidson Street 500s out there on the used market. And that's the bike I took my MSF course on. Motorcycles in general will run from a couple of thousand up to around 8,000 or so for most bikes. I'm sure there are a few dollars more, but I would say the average though is typically going to be between 5,000 and 7,500 for the ones around 500 cc's. Because these are considered beginner bikes, there's also a sizable used market of machines out there with a few hundred to a few thousand miles as people used them for their first 6 months or a year of riding and then decided to upgrade. Do not fall into the trap of, you need to get a bike you can grow into. No, you don't. You are looking for a bike that will get through a campus commute for 3 or 4 years, maybe longer if getting an advanced degree. This is not a forever bike. This is a budget-friendly, fuel-efficient, smaller bike that can take a little abuse from a typical college environment. If you get a big bike, it's not as good on campus. If you get an expensive one, you'll turn prematurely gray worrying about it on campus. So let's look at the overall price ranges for these machines again. Under 50cc scooters are going to be from about $750 to $4,500. Over 50cc scooters, double it, $2,000 to $9,000. Under 500cc motorcycles are going to be $2,000-ish up to around $9,000, with the main ones being, like I said, $5,000 to $7,500. Look, I know this is a lot of information, but hopefully I've been able to at least get you started. Remember this, when you're setting a budget, leave about $1,000 to cover gear like helmets, gloves, boots, rain gear, and so forth. It's not necessarily going to be sunny and 72 every day. And remember to check on how much insurance is going to run on the bikes you're looking at. Oh, okay, that's it. Well, thanks for stopping by today. If you've not already done so, please take a look at the other videos that are part of this series and be sure to like and subscribe so you're notified of the upcoming installments. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk next time. Bye, y'all.